So let's kick off, and then if anyone jumps on. So today is probably one of my most favorite sessions to run. And as we go through this, I'm really going to invite you to start thinking about the year that's been and what's coming for you, particularly as we complete 2020 in the next kind of 6-7 weeks towards the end of the year, of how could you really start to find natural ways of bringing more kindness and play into your lives day to day. So I started studying play and kindness right in the beginning of my journey because I could start to feel personally the physiological changes, but also the emotional and mental changes when I allowed myself to go into a play state. So becoming less serious about life, about work, about all of the things that are going on, and actually really welcoming these kind words that we can utilize towards ourselves, towards each other. And what I started to realize is that there is so much evidence to show us the benefits of play. And for those of the leaders that were in our session at the beginning of the year, what can often happen is when we go to give ourselves permission to play, to go into a play state, there's a whole array and a mixed bag of emotions that come up. And the biggest one that often will rise is guilt. Now, the challenge with this is because we've been built to be in this world that has taught us that life needs to be serious. But if you look back over history and we kind of look at some of these historical greats, they all believed in the magic of play. Even Albert Einstein, play is the highest form of research. Thomas Edison, I never did a day's work in my life. It was all fun. We start to understand, and if you think back to when you were kids, depending on the generation that you were in, going into a play state and seeing things within life to be more playful allows us to go into the positive brain state that brings in creativity, innovation, but we can have memories associated to play that can bring up negative emotions and feelings that are connected with it as well. So I'm actually writing a book on play and the benefits of bringing play back into our lives, our relationships, our workplaces. And I was talking to a very, dear mentor of mine. He's one of my friend's dads. And when I started talking to him about it, he said to me, Kyla, I would never choose to play, and I would never choose to read a book about play. And at first I went into like that wounded part of like, why would he say that? That's so mean. And then instead I went into curiosity and I asked him, tell me the reasons why. And he said that he had memories of playing as a kid that brought up negative emotions for him: rejection, abandonment, not being picked for a certain team, feeling like he didn't belong and that he was an outsider. And so we all have these interconnected ideas around play that maybe from childhood, it might just be this idea that there's too many serious things to do in life. I don't have time to play. So giving yourself permission to play, I want to invite you to also start to understand that you're going to be breaking through barriers of beliefs, of ways of being, of what you've been taught that tells you that you don't have time to play, that you're too busy to play. How could you possibly play when there's work to do, when there's things to do around the house, when there's more important things going on in your life? And so we just start to become aware of that, but then knowing that science is proving the opposite to be true, that if we actually start to bring in these elements of play into our life day to day, not only does it make it more enjoyable, but it allows for these huge health benefits to come through at the same time too. So in its most natural form, play is an activity engaged in for pure enjoyment and recreation. So we imagine that it doesn't actually have a practical purpose. There is no ending to it. We're simply doing it because it's fun and it's enjoyable to us. What actually has happened, and there's all this research around, our state of being around play started to change after playgrounds got brought in, because playgrounds then created this structured time and this structured way of us starting to believe that that was how we played. And so all of these shifts and changes in our psyche started coming in, thinking that there was only a specific place and a specific time for us to play. And then we go back into life per se. But I like to imagine that what if you started to give yourself permission to play your way in life? And how could it then make mundane tasks even more enjoyable? I did an Instagram post a couple of weeks ago, and I was vacuuming the house, but I had my sound counseling headphones on and I was dancing like crazy. And I was making that mundane task of vacuuming the house more playful, more enjoyable. And it was so much more fun. If I'm doing my tax or tasks that I don't love, I make sure that the music's up really loud and there's this sense of enjoyment. So you can choose an activity of enjoyment that is play, or you can bring a state of more playfulness into things that you're doing day to day. So I'm going to pause for a moment. I'm going to unmute you, or you can share in the chat box. I would just love to hear from each of you, what is something that you do that is playful, or even something you did as a kid that reminds you of play, but what is playing your way? And as you're kind of sharing in the chat, I'll share some examples. Like this morning when I went swimming, the waves are crazy at the ocean. And I just looked at myself and I was like, I'm going to get pummeled on these waves if I go too far in. So I was really careful, but it was kind of playful, just playing on the shore in the waves. So we've got music. Music is literally one of the best play go-tos that there is. Cross stitch. Oh, I used to love cross stitch as a kid. Lego is such a great one. Awesome. Anyone else, feel free to pop them in the chat or unmute yourself at the same time too. The reason that I'm getting you to share is there's no right or wrong way to play. It's an activity that you can do for no reason at all, but that you like to do with full presence. And so going into that, my husband and I take turns scaring each other. I like that one. That's a great one, Jess. Dancing, watching my kids colour in a lot and starting to think I need to do that more. It's a great one. Do you know that some of the top books being sold on Amazon, and I think I shared this in one of the workshops, are actually adults colouring in books, because they are then mindful activities at the same time too. So I'm going to kind of invite you, as we go through talking about the benefits, puzzles is an amazing one, is to start thinking about how could you schedule some play in your day. Or I love dressing up too. Yay, that's one of my favorite ones. How could you actually start to give yourself permission to bring this in more? Remember, we've spoken about this so many times. The brain is so much more high performing in a positive state. So some of the workplaces that I work with, they actually have a playroom set up. You think about Google and all of its like ping pong tables and things like that. Because the benefit of this is if you just are in that state of play, our imagination's kicking in, our creativity's kicking in, and what it then allows for is other ideas to come about things that you're doing about life. So the benefits of play, because I know that it's really important to get our skeptic on board, it's been proven to relieve stress. It improves our brain function and our health. It stimulates the mind. It boosts creativity. It also improves relationships and connections. You think about when you see kids playing, they're not judging each other when they're young. They're not thinking about anything. They're not worried about themselves, though at a younger age now it's kind of coming that way with social media. They're just connecting and enjoying themselves. It actually has us feeling young and energetic. It helps to develop and improve our social skills. It teaches cooperation and it supports emotional resets and regulation. So you could start creating a playlist. I like to imagine it could be a music playlist, but it could be some other activities that you just have, particularly if you're still working from remotely at the moment, where you just take a little play break throughout the day so that it's something that actually gives you a rest from what you're doing. But also the benefit comes from doing it with mindfulness and full presence. So we've got some now. Ravi shared table tennis, chess, Sudoku. I love all of those as well. So what if you set a timer for yourself and said, I'm going to be fully present playing table tennis, doing this activity for 5 minutes, 10 minutes. It doesn't have to be a long time, but it gets you out of that stress-based way of thinking and has us then igniting that sense of energy inside of ourselves, which is really important as well. Positive behaviors that come from play and bringing play into our workplace and our day-to-day. And post today, I'm going to invite you to start having conversations as well within your smaller teams, but also even within your family to say, how could we bring more play into our home environment? Because life has become, especially this year, so serious, but we have been spending more time with the people that we live with our loved ones, and now obviously with restrictions and borders opening up, we get more time to connect again. There is this essence of social connection, which is one of the most important things for our wellness. It brings in creativity, productivity, flexibility. Now, I like to pause on the productivity piece for a moment, because if you have a pumping to-do list, if you've got so much to do, but you're in a stress state, remember that corpus callosum in your brain freezes. It can sometimes end up, we have brain fog, that we have decision fatigue, and we start to feel weary throughout the day. Every voice inside of you, if you have a reminder that's like, take 5 minutes to play and be fully present with that, you're going to still have a conversation inside that says, I don't have time for this. This is too silly. There's too important things to do right now. But the more that you build in this practice of play, the more you start to notice how good you feel, how creative you are, how more connected you are with yourself and others, the easier it is to give yourself permission to do it at the same time too. So it does build greater levels of empathy. When we're playing and we're in that free state of just doing it just for the reason of doing it, it brings us into the present moment, which means that we can then really empathize more with ourselves, with others, with what's going on. It helps with those problem solving. They've actually shown that since we've kind of gone into the technological age and out of the industrial era, that because we're doing less tactile hand-based play, there is even an impact on decision making that's going on. And they're finding, particularly in the careers like engineering, because back in the day when we used to play, part of it might be something broke, so we kind of spent some time sitting there fixing it and using our hands. And this tactileness within play is very important from a decision making, problem solving perspective. And so starting to think about that in terms of the play that you do, and especially if you've got young kids, of making sure that some of the play that they do is actually using their hands, is inviting in decision making. Because also now what happens is if something breaks, because we're kind of in this instantaneous society where we can get things so easily, we more often than not will go buy something new. But obviously back in the day, we would take time to try and fix it. And there is that problem solving that comes from that at a young age as well. It also increases our ability to manage stress because it puts us in the positive brain state, but it also allows the stress to move out of our body because we're not focused on our stresses, our worries, our concerns, because in that moment, we're actually allowing ourselves to enjoy ourselves. So I have a little bit of an acronym that I like to play with in terms of play. If we can look at and choose any activity, there is no right or wrong way to play. I want to be really clear on that because the things that I do for play might be someone else's torture in terms of like playing in a freezing cold ocean or all the like dancing. Not everybody loves to dance, but doing it with full presence, getting curious on something that when you do it, you can lose time, or you find yourself just juicing up and feeling a little bit of joy in that space as well. Really just doing it for the sake of doing it because it's enjoyment and it's fun, instead of thinking that there has to be an outcome to it. Now, if your play is some form of competitive game at the same time too, that's okay. But it's kind of also making sure that you're present, you're doing it, and you're there anyway. Because sometimes I know, particularly when there's team sports as a play activity, sometimes the outcome of winning can make people feel good at the same time too. Stepping into accepting and loving all that is uniquely you as you go through this. So going back and becoming curious as when you were a kid, what did you love to do for play? I was talking to a friend recently and she loved, I think it was called King's Quest, was a computer game when we were younger. I'm showing my age now. And I used to love playing Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego? But I look at my values now in life and I love travel, I love freedom, and I love adventuring. And Where in the World is Carmen Sandiego was a computer game where you had to figure out where she was and where she was going, and there was clues and things like that. So you can go back to starting to think about what were the things that you loved to do as a kid, and knowing that there's huge health benefits to just having moments in time where you allow yourself the kindness to play and to enjoy yourself at the same time. Yay! I've got someone in my ear. Laura said she loved that game too. So there was a story that I've shared. I think I might have shared it along the way, but there is a great podcast by a gentleman called Dr. Chatterjee. And he's done all of this work about passion, but I like to imagine that play and passion very similarly align with each other. And he had a CFO come and see him, and he had type 2 diabetes, he was obese, and he was depressed. And for months and months, they'd been working on his nutrition. They'd been working on all of his changes in lifestyle and everything like that. And nothing was really shifting his mood or his type 2 diabetes symptoms or how he was feeling. So out of nowhere, Dr. Chatterjee said to him, what was something that you loved to do as a kid? And he shared with him and said that he used to love to play with trains, but he hadn't done it in decades. So he asked him if he had one, and he said yes. And he said to him, I want you to, for 5 minutes every day, play with your train. And the CFO looked at him and just thought that he was crazy and thought that it was the weirdest thing ever, but like, what was the worst that could happen? And then Dr. Chatterjee went on his way. He sees like so many patients and just kind of left it at that. And he didn't see him for another 3 months, but in between he saw his wife in the car park, and his wife came up to him, the wife of the patient, and said, I don't know what you've done with my husband, but the man that I fell in love with is back. Thank you so much. And Dr. Chatterjee didn't really know what had gone on yet until the guy came back to see him 3 months later. All of his blood works had improved in terms of his diabetes, in terms of his weight, but most importantly, his striving for life had come back. He was loving his job again. He was passionate and happy in his relationship with his wife. And basically this 5 minutes a day of playing with his trains had turned into him researching new trains, looking at train conferences that he could go to, and really igniting this passion and this aliveness in him for something that mattered and was really important. The reason that I share that is I get it. When life gets busy, when you've got competing priorities and demands in terms of kids, family members, loved ones, maybe people that you care for, work, and all of those obligations, we can forget to schedule and plan time for things that we love to do and that bring us into this play state. And so I would invite you to just have a think about that for you and start to think about where you could add a little bit of this in your day, and know that it's okay that along the way you might feel a little bit of guilt when you go to play, because that's a completely natural step to be in. So as we go through that, obviously the main thing we want to do when you step into playing is start to be kind to yourself along the way. I find huge amounts of play in random acts of kindness, because I just create this imagination story around, sometimes with the shopping trolleys, you've got to put coins in them. I'll leave them in there and I'll say to myself, oh, I wonder if the person that finds it, what they think, what they say, if it's like made their day. Now, someone could just find it and say, oh, the idiot forgot her coin in the trolley. But I have this whole kind of way of just knowing that these little random acts could be the thing that makes somebody's day. In the morning, I smile at strangers and I say to myself, I could be the only smile that they see all day. And you start to realize you can be playful with your kindness. Now, kindness has been proven to be the opposite of stress, because kindness brings in oxytocin. And oxytocin is the connection, it's the bonding hormone, and it also brings in calmness. It brings in a warmth over the body. It lowers blood pressure and it increases our energy. It can also help with this epidemic that we have around loneliness, because when you do a random act of kindness, You feel connected in that way. And especially now we've had so much social isolation this year, doing an act of kindness also has a ripple effect to it, which means that if you do one, that single act can not only increase your happiness, but there's a ripple effect that says that if people see a kind act, they are then more inclined to do one at the same time too. So there's this beautiful kind of flow on that goes between being playful and even inviting someone to come and play with you, and then also the kindness that can come from this as well. So if we're in this world and we're coming towards these final stressful parts at the end of the year, bringing in moments where we focus on being kind to ourselves, to each other, and actually intentionally doing a kind act. Now, I messaged Ash last night because I didn't even know that we're actually in World Kindness Week, and we already set these times in place, so that just makes me even more excited. And Friday is actually World Kindness Day. And so having a think about how could you choose more kindness towards yourself, practicing random acts of kindness, actually putting yourself in other people's shoes, really starting to look at where are my judgments around others? When I'm stressed, what behaviors do I step into? Could you choose like a power statement where you actually are using kind words towards yourself throughout the day, and knowing that going into this state of being kinder rather than bullying, judgmental, criticizing ourselves, or being in that highly stressed state day to day, it really opens up our body and releases any kind of patterns that we might have inside of ourselves of blockages around past and emotions that need to be cleared. But you can actually start to create a practice of compassion and loving kindness in your day. One of the things that I found, and we're going to chat on this, I'm going to come back to this slide in a second, and I'm going to email this through to all of you. As I was going through this and I was adding some things to it, there's actually this beautiful random act of kindness website, and it has a kind act that you can do every single day of the year. So this might be a little bit too much to start, but I thought it might be a beautiful invitation for you within your teams or within your homes to start having a conversation around how can we bring more kindness into our lives. And these are really simple things that you can do. Tell someone's manager about the good service that you received. Write a note of gratitude to a veteran or to somebody, I always think the elder generation, thanking them for their service. Send an email to your boss telling them how much they've helped you this year. See how they're really simple things that can only take a couple of minutes in a day, but they can have this ripple effect in terms of how we're feeling. I like to kind of simplify it as well in this way of having a commitment to doing random words of thanks, random words of kindness. So random word of thanks might be that once a week or once a day, you just write a thank you note to someone, a thank you email, a thank you text, and you just send it off. The most important thing when it comes to kind habits and actions is be really present with how you feel doing the action as well, because there is this kind of ripple effect. The health benefits come from being present with it as well, because if you're going to do it and then you're saying to yourself, oh, it doesn't matter, they won't care that I write this note anyway, it kind of defeats the purpose of it. Doing random words of kindness. You could see somebody on the street and tell them that they look beautiful, or thank somebody that you have in your life, and just actually sharing kind words about something somebody's done or who they're being. Random acts of appreciation could be something as simple as getting a coffee for somebody and paying for it before they come. I'm going to send through other ideas of things that I do as well. Bringing some laughter into somebody's day can have a huge sense of shift and changes in our lives. But what I want to invite you to start to think about is, how could you bring kindness into your lives and what's most important to you day to day, and particularly as we're coming through this later end of the year. So one final thing I want to touch on before we finish up as well is I'm going to send you through as a part of the follow-up. Oh, it's gone. As a part of the follow-up, these love languages and words of affirmation, physical touch, and all of these parts is we all have different love languages. And if you can start to from a place of kindness, but also a place of play, understand that knowing what your love language is and the way that you need to be spoken to, what's important to you. Is it that quality time with friends is really, really important to you? Do you love gift giving? Is it physical touch? Is it words of affirmation and encouraging words? Is it acts of service? When you start to know what this is, and there's a quiz that you can do, I would encourage any of you that have family, partners, or anything to do it together. It's a really beautiful activity, and it kind of summates ways of you determining what kindness and kind acts are going to be supported with you day to day. So as we finish up, as a really simple way of having you start to think about and look at day to day, I'm going to encourage you to, when you get the follow-up email tomorrow, ask yourself, how could I schedule in either some more play or some more kind words or kind acts in my days and weeks leading into the end of the year? So Jess has said it's so important. One of my favorite things about my job is thanking the broader team individually for something they've done. I know how that much it means to them. It means so much to people. And most importantly, those thoughts that you want or you think about sharing but you don't say, I would encourage you through these periods in time to do that. Laura's got a bowl in your house and printed 100 acts of kindness and pull one each morning. Oh, I love that. That's amazing. So when you get these calendars as well, you could print them out and they have an activity for every day of the year, which for me is phenomenal when I found that. So I would love anyone to just kind of, I've unmuted you all now, to share any commitment that you might have coming into this final part of the year. But obviously, I just want to complete as well by just saying thank you all so much for being here, being present, for allowing me to do what I do and share the messages of kindness and play, most importantly. That is so important to me because it allows me to do what I love to do in the world. And I'm just very, very grateful for that. And then just share any questions that you have or any sharings on a play or a kindness commitment that you might have. They're popping up. Taking the time to welcome new people and include them. It is. So that's a really great one, Fran. When new people come in, I made a commitment many years ago of like when I would see people sitting by themselves, sitting and having conversations as well. So that's a great one. So thank you so much. Jess, I don't know if
Sorry, I have a quick question, if you don't mind me asking.
Of course, I'd love questions.
With my little bowl that I have, most of them are for things when you're out and about, but with COVID nowadays,
Yep.
I don't leave my house for up to 3 or 4 times or days at a time.
Yep.
And I'm finding it more difficult to try to do things for others because I am so housebound. Yeah. Any suggestions on COVID kindness?
Yeah, definitely. So with those ones, I think words of thanks and words of appreciation are some of the biggest ones that you can do. I, at one point, and I didn't make it to 365 people, but I started at the beginning of the year, every single day, sending a thanks to you letter to people from my life, past and present, who had supported me in some way or made an impact on my life. And that was a really nice thing to do daily, of then sending either, if I could find them on Facebook or I had email or phone numbers for them. And it was just a really simple message of saying thanks to people. So thinking about more of the verbal ones that you can do can really help in that. And obviously, hopefully restrictions are getting easier and easier. And so there will be more opportunities to go out and about and do it. Also, this loving kindness is a beautiful one to do, where we just kind of go into the energy of kindness, and rippling that out as a form of meditation is a great one too. And so, yeah, any of the words ones and thanks, I think, are some of the huge ones you can do there too. Some people might send like an Uber Eats meal to surprise someone or something like that too, as a different one around that. So Jess, I guess just wanted to invite if there's anything you wanted to share with the team as we kind of complete today as well.
Thanks, Kyla, and thanks for going through this. It's a fun one when you talk about play, because I know how passionate you are, and even in hearing the stories or written words from the team, it's one that excites a lot of passion, I think, amongst everyone, because you relate it back to childhood for many of us, and the joy that we took in that. But thanks to everyone for participating. Obviously, the intent of rolling this out was to make sure that we were honoring each individual wholly, and it was a year that no one was anticipating with COVID, and so in a way, the added support that we've gotten through Kyla and through these tools and material, I think, has been even more helpful based on the year that we've had. And I know it doesn't take away the work that we have on a regular basis and how much the teams are working to try to keep up with volumes and workload. But the hope was that it provides some tool and some mechanism to have some outlets in spite of those things. So appreciate you taking the time to listen and to participate in this, because really it was for you all in the end, and the materials are still available, certainly from what Kyla and Ash have set up. So thank you, Kyla. Appreciate that.
My greatest pleasure. And yeah, to kind of follow on from that, none of us could have imagined that the year that we are in. So if we go to kindness and play as a way to kind of complete the year, I would encourage you, I know I shared in the last one, to start having conversations, even if it's journaling with yourself, with your teams, with your loved ones, with your friends, around things that you're most proud of through this year, and really giving those words of recognition to yourselves for all that you've achieved through this period in time, and really knowing that the embodiment of all of these things that we've spoken about comes when we actually just set some small reminders. I see that Fran shared in her calendar, she's got reminders that pop up of things to do. Just encouraging you, out of all the topics and the content that we've spoken about, come back to some simplicity around, is it play, is it kindness, is it nutrition, movement, whatever that self-care toolkit that we went back to. But just knowing that all of this is about you feeling better from the inside through stressful, challenging times. And yes, know that I am available, that there is all the information there. And I know Ash has done such a good job of splitting it up to make it easier for you to watch and digest at the same time too. But just encouraging you to be loving, kind, and playful as we complete what has been one hell of a year. So big thanks to Ash and Mark and Jess for making this all possible at the same time too.
Thank you. Thank you to yourself and Ash as well. Ash has been the champion around this the entire time, and it's been her joy to watch people participate and get something out of this. So thank you so much, Ash.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Wonderful
Thank
day.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.